Welcome to Wesley Impact. I'm Keith Garner. What motivates you to do the things that you do? Thank you for joining us today. Over the past few weeks, we've spent time looking at some of the more memorable conversations we've had here on Wesley Impact with the guests we've had on the programme. This is the final episode in this short series that I'm actually hosting from the back deck of my home. And I hope you've enjoyed the conversations as much as I have in bringing them to you. The conversation I'd like to share today was recorded way back in 2012 with Professor Graeme Clark, the inventor of the cochlear ear implant. It's one of my favourites. I asked you earlier that question, what motivates you to do the things you do? Because that was a question I asked Graeme Clark about the cochlear ear implant, and I'm looking forward to sharing his answer to that question and others in the conversation that we'll run later in the programme. We'll be joined by Leah Brett and the Wesley Impact Band in the studio, who will sing Hour of Love. And I'll share some thoughts on Jesus explaining to his disciples what must happen as he goes to Jerusalem, where he will suffer and die on the cross, and also what he would be raised from the dead on the third day. He also told the disciples that to be true, they may have to also suffer and undergo hardship in following him. But first, as you know, Wesley Mission is a church, and everything that we do is motivated and guided by the Christian faith from the very earliest days. The community service we seek to operate and provide for others finds its origins and finds its pathways that lead to meaningful life but begin in faith. I'd like to share with you today Chloe's story. You'll hear about her today and next week. Today we'll see how Chloe came into contact originally with Wesley Mission through our Wesley Vocational Institute, being trained through our Parents Next programme, to be eventually upskilled to re-enter the workforce. And next week we'll see the second part of Chloe's story, which is so exciting as she re-enters the workforce and actually becomes a part of the Wesley Mission team.
The first time I heard about Wesley Vocational Institute, I was a participant in the Parents Next program. I was struggling at the time. I was going through a relationship breakdown in my family, wasn't in a very good, stable place. Come through to the Parents Next program, and that helped me sort of get myself out of the house, get myself into some, employment-ready options, which was training.
I remember Chloe when she first came to our introduction session. She was shy, she was in a relationship, she had two of her own kids and two other kids, one with a major disability. She again didn't think she could do this, and over the period of starting the course, she grew.
The support I gained from coming through training with WVI was fantastic. Len and Rachel were amazing in WVI, easy to talk to. If I ever needed any extra help, the trainer was amazing as well, Sonja, so she was a very nice lady. She, supported our whole group to get through our training as well. If there was times where we were wanting to give up, she never let us, she kept pushing us forward and kept giving us that good push that we needed back then. If we had any other issues going on around training, WVI were just a phone call away.
Wesley Vocational Institute looks at our clients. We look at their needs, which some of their needs can be transport, childcare, food support, and also maybe financial support for rent or fuel to get to courses. We arrange the training on site to fit their needs, and we also help them find work placement, which will lead to employment.
I was really proud of myself once I did the Cert 4. It was great to come through and successfully complete that. So I started looking for some work, just casual work. I wasn't really confident that I was able to get work. seeing as I didn't have much experience, but just put my resume out there to different places. And then I guess it was within about 6 months, I got a phone call, once again from WVI, from Len, offering me a job within Wesley Mission. So yeah, I come in for the interview and was successful, so here I am.
If you would like to learn more about Wesley Mission, visit wesleymission.org.au. You can find help in our community services, connect with our church and congregations, discover a volunteer role that suits you, stay up to date on the latest news and information, donate to support our work, and help make a positive difference in your community. You can also connect with us on social media and subscribe to receive the latest news and information about Wesley Mission directly into your inbox. Visit wesleymission.org.au.
Please don't hesitate to be in touch if Wesley Mission can help you or a loved one. Our contact details are on the screen now, and we're always ready to roll up our sleeves and help in any way we can. In 2012, we were joined in the studio by Professor Graeme Clark, the inventor of the cochlear ear implant. His work has gone on to change the lives of thousands of people around the world, many who use his invention to aid their hearing. Some hearing for the first time in their lives. Let's reflect on that conversation with Graeme Clark way back in 2012. It's an amazing journey, your story, but I was interested to know that you wanted to be an ear doctor by the age of 10. Why?
Well, Dad was deaf and he was in a chemist shop, and I was embarrassed at that stage when people would come into his chemist shop and ask for commercial and confidential items, and I thought I would help him and others like him.
So that obviously stayed with you. And I know, to cut a long story short, you left your family in Camden, went to Sydney Boys High and Scots College, and then studying medicine at the University of Sydney. Something happened on your first semester break. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, firstly, when I was at Scots College, we had one master who emphasised that God was real, and we should join a student Christian movement at Scots College, at Sydney University. And so I did, and after my first semester, I went to a camp, and on the camp we were asked to invite Jesus Christ into our lives. And I thought, oh, there can't be any harm in doing that. So I did, but I had this extraordinary experience of reality and experiencing what I now look back and believe was the presence of Christ.
And that obviously has been so important to you. Now, after that, you say you felt God shut doors on personal ambition to some extent for you and steered you into a passion for surgery. But it'd be interesting to know a bit more about that.
Well, firstly, I always wanted to help deaf people, and I didn't quite know how. And I did well in my studies and wanted then to be a thinking doctor, which was in those days a physician, not a surgeon. But I just found that all the jobs were taken, and I finished up being a general surgeon. And then the lowest of the order at that stage was ENT surgeons. But I had no option, but I'm glad I did.
Look, you married, you honeymooned on the Ariana's maiden voyage to the UK, went to study in Edinburgh College, University College of Surgeons. Your wife is to have a child, heads back to Australia, and you planned to join her after graduation, but you got stuck in Egypt. What happened there?
That was a terrible experience. I came back a self-confident surgeon, and on board the ship I thought I might have acute appendicitis and I might have to take my own appendix out. For the first time in my life, I realised I couldn't rely on my own surgical skills, especially taking my own appendix out, and I had to trust in God. And I prayed. I was shipped off the boat to Port Said, put in an Egyptian hospital there, and the surgeon said he'd let me stay there, take my appendix out, and I'd stay for the next 2 months till the ship came by. I thought, no, I don't want that. I prayed. The nuns, I asked if they'd take me down to the chapel. We prayed, and miraculously, looking back, things opened up and I was able to get back to London and then back to Australia to my wife.
It's often said a great experience for a doctor is to be in hospital themselves, isn't it, really, to be in need of help. You returned to Australia in 1966, and a study by an American surgeon rekindles your passion to do research despite criticism. But there's no backing and there's no money. So you've got no money, you've got no backing. How do you actually make a fist of it then?
Well, firstly, I needed money to do anything, really, and no one wanted to help me because I was seen as an oddball. They called me the Clark. The clown Clark.
Oh dear.
and when that happened, I couldn't get money, and then I prayed about it. And I didn't pray just for money, just that God's will would be done.
And then I read about the telethon turned everything round. I mean, that's something that almost you could have never imagined would have happened. But tell us what happened.
Well, I was sitting in my office and I got the call from Sir Reginald Ansett team, and he had probably been the answer to my prayer. And Reg wanted to run a telethon or two, because at that stage they were all relevant, and he wanted to do it for personal reasons for deafness. So that really gave us the kickstart.
Now, look, I just want to talk about this difficult area because it's one many Christians in the professional world can face, the criticism that goes around. You were called the animal doctor, not just the clown Clark, or the Clark Crown, as ever you call it. Animal doctor, what a title that was. And at that time, you could say your university job and your whole career's on the line.
My whole career could have been on the line. If I know that if I hadn't been successful ultimately in helping this deaf person, I would have had to pack my bags and leave Melbourne and leave the job. But the stress was considerable, and I did it and managed through prayer and trying to do the right thing.
In 1977, close to the time when you said you could operate on the first patient, you had a breakthrough.
Yes, well, there were many problems. Everything I did was breaking new ground. And when we're getting ready to implant our first patient, I realised that the electrodes that go in that tiny spiral of the inner ear wouldn't go. And they wouldn't pass round far enough. And I was getting desperate. And I discovered that the beach is a good place to do research. I found a little shell that was like the inner ear, picked up a grass blade which was bent at the tip, found that if it was stiff at the base, when curled around the shell, it would do what we wanted to do in the inner ear. And I raced back, cut our holiday short, and that has been the basis for all electrodes since that time.
Graeme, your whole holiday stories seem to have significant moments in them. You're on a ship, something changes, you end up in another country, and you're on the beach with an amazing discovery like that. So it's the 1st of August in 1978, the moment of truth arrived. Your colleagues couldn't believe how calm you were. So tell us about that.
Well, this was the key element in the whole study and journey. On the 1st of August 1978, I went down to the operating theatre. My colleague, Professor Crox, looked at me and said, "Professor Clark, today is your moment of truth." And I knew then that I had to be successful. And I had been away that weekend with my wife for a prayer weekend. I was really quite at peace. I left it to God, and everyone else was in a panic, and I was really at peace.
And that's the great thing of a Christian. In the end, it's not us. It's all of God through us, isn't it? Which is very different.
That's right. You can hand over these problems.
Looking back, you've helped something like 55,000 people through this particular research, and many more through what actually you've been engaged in. Can you believe how far it's all come?
No, sometimes I still have to pinch myself. Actually, there are 200,000 people now, which wouldn't have been even dreamed possible. When I started, I used to go to the press and say there might be a few thousand people in Australia, and I was severely criticised. But now it's just so wonderful seeing these people, children and adults, who have been restored to give them their life back.
And really, just in a sentence or two, what for you is the greatest joy that you've had in this kind of surgery?
The greatest joy, without any doubt, is seeing the young children being normally hearing and being able to communicate with their family and friends, and the joy it brings to the family, to them, and the opportunities makes me still want to cry.
And let me just say that really there is a link between that joy and your first desire as a 10-year-old child to say, I want to help my dad to hear again. Because even though you may not have been able to help your dad to hear like that, you've done it for many, many more people.
That's been a wonderful journey that he helped me start.
Yes, and we thank God for you, and thank you for giving us the time to come into the studio and share something of that lovely God story in your life, Graeme.
Pleasure indeed. I like to share it.
I hope you enjoyed looking back at that conversation with Professor Graeme Clark as much as I did bringing it to you. It's certainly an inspirational story of determination and an example of one person being motivated by personal experience and to God's love in achieving many of the blessings it may bring. Next week, we'll be back in the studio for our regular interviews, and I've got more lovely guests lined up for you. This is a final instalment in this short series looking back at some of our more memorable conversations. Do let us know if you've enjoyed the series, and feel free to contact us if you'd like us to revisit other conversations you've seen in the past. Now let's welcome Leah Brett and the band in the studio to sing Hour of Love.
Time for healing, a moment in the morning for prayer. Begin anew with sunrise, wipe the dust from your eyes, be rid of your disguises again. A little for your father, a little for your mother, a little for your sister, a little for your brother, a little love for your soul will make you whole. If you're looking for protection, learn to read directions written in the depths of your soul. Remember in the new day, seed and peace meditate. Stillness takes you farther than you know. A little for your father, a little for your mother, a little for your sister, a little for your brother, a little love for your soul will make you whole. La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la la If you wanna walk in power, dedicate an hour for the shower of love. Do it in the evening, you will be receiving the peace that you've been leaving behind. A little for your father, a little for your mother, a little for your sister, a little for your brother, a little love for your soul will make you whole. Get rid of your disguises again. Get rid of your disguises again. Get rid of your disguises again.
As we reach this point in Matthew's Gospel, it comes after Jesus has given insight as to his real person and that mission at Caesarea Philippi. The Matthean account goes on to show how he began to share with his special band of disciples what will happen to him. So I'm reading today from Matthew chapter 16, verses 21 through to verse 28. Jesus predicts his death. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests and the teachers of the law, that he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. "Never, never, Lord," he said. "This shall never happen to you." Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You're a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. God, what good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with his angels, and then he will reward each person according to what they have done. Truly I tell you, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." Jesus had agreed and admitted to being the long-awaited Messiah. That's what precedes this passage, and we find it in Jesus declaring that he was the Messiah, and Peter confessing openly who he is. Remember, Simon Peter said, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." He told the disciples that they were not to speak about this to others. Now, it was very difficult for them to do this. We see many examples of how they couldn't resist talking about it. But he did say in verse 20, then he ordered his disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. Jesus went on to teach that his suffering and death were absolutely necessary, and that Peter seems to understand this more than anybody else. His Pentecost sermon in Acts 2, which is such a fantastic chapter in our Bibles, shows he believed it was necessary to fulfill God's purpose. We see it in Acts 2:23. This is a picture of Jesus here in this passage, truly calling his first disciples to renounce themselves and to be obedient to his kingdom. It's a gospel motive again and again. Leave and find. Lay hold of that which is ahead by letting go of what is behind. The true life of a disciple enables a person, when living close to him, to enjoy the fullness of life. Following will reap a great reward, whatever that might mean, and the true disciple will experience glory. That's the great promise that he makes. Truly, I tell you, there will be some here that will experience that glory. Can you imagine what that must have been like to listen to Jesus talking in that way, especially as he's been talking about suffering? Thomas à Kempis, which was such an inspiration to John Wesley through his marvellous book, The Imitation of Christ, writes in this way: everyone wants to rejoice with Jesus. Few are willing to bear anything for him. And that same challenge is there for us. If we're going to follow Jesus, are we prepared to take up the cross and follow, with all the implications and ramifications in our lives that might be? We may not all die physically, but if you're really going to be a disciple, there will be a cost to it, a cost that is real. And it's very interesting that dying to self and being raised to the new life in Christ becomes the heart of the message. The message is communicated in baptism, in trust, and in faith. It's the message of what it means to be a real disciple. Not just, I'm one of the mates, I'm in the band, but I'm prepared to live with him, with all the implications of that, day by day. So, as Jesus predicts his death, he makes and puts down the challenge to the disciples. He does the same for me, and he does the same for you. Are you prepared to pick up the cross and follow him? Are you prepared to count the cost, and whatever that may mean in your life?
If you would like to contact Keith and find out more about today's program, write to us at Wesley Mission, Post Office Box A 5555, Sydney South 1235, or you can send us an email to impacttv@wesleymission.org.au. On our website, you can catch up on past episodes of Wesley Impact, find out more about our work, read online magazines and articles, and connect with us on social media. You can also connect through Keith's blog and stay up to date on all the latest news and information from Wesley Mission, wesleymission.org.au.
I hope you've enjoyed this short series looking at some of the memorable conversations that we've shared together on Wesley Impact over the last 15 years. I very much enjoyed looking back on the conversations and find it interesting to see how God is relevant to the lives of people from a whole variety of different sections of our community. I'm looking forward to spending time with you again next week when we'll be back in the normal Wesley Impact studio and set. So God bless you, and I hope you have a really great week.
Wesley Mission walks alongside people of all ages struggling with homelessness, addictions, mental health issues and financial stress. To find out more, visit wesleymission.org.au.